And we are live. What is going on, full-time family? It is time for our very first live show on this channel in over a quarter year. 3 months, you guys. A quarter year we have not been able to stream on this channel, but we are back. Bullshit copyright strikes. I looked at what it was. It was from the Kamaru Usman versus Rafael dos Anjos fight companion 6 months ago. Some Glory, that's who the claimant was, Glory. I don't know what the hell they saw and they wanted to strike, but we are back. And we got some stuff to talk about, guys. Super Saiyan Sage Northcutt, we need to gather the Dragon Balls. We're going to have to wish his, surgery goes well and he can fully recover after that brutal knockout loss over the weekend. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen it by now. Super Saiyan Sage Northcutt's one debut did not go well. He fought against a dude that had no remorse for his facial structure at all. I mean, it was almost like Francis Ngannou hit this young man. We're going to talk about that, but before we get into the show further, I've got to welcome on Forward. A lot of you guys know who Forward is. This is going to be a new episode or a new series we do. I want to get to know some of you guys. We're all fight fans here. That's pretty much what this channel is, just fight fans coming together, talking MMA, and a lot of you are knowledgeable about the sport as well. So what we're going to do here, we're going to talk about some of the topics and current events in MMA, and then at the end of the show, I'm going to ask you guys, or Forward in this case, some of his favorite fights of all time, some of his favorite upcoming fights, some of his favorite fighters, and we'll just get to know you guys a little bit better that way. So without further ado, what is going on, Forward?
Bro, I'm happy I'm in the building. I appreciate obviously the invite, and yeah, I've just checked the analytics. This is actually the #1 MMA YouTube channel in the world. So again, it's a big pleasure, it's a big honor to be in the channel. So yeah, I
It's
appreciate it. Let's get
definitely
into it.
not, but I appreciate that. There's some big channels out there. I do appreciate that,
No, bro,
brother.
I checked, I double checked. It is the #1 channel, but you can be humble about it. It's all good, bro. But
I'm telling you, man,
the
there's
streets know. The streets know.
Papa Chael. I mean, we got some big channels out there, but that's funny you say that. I mean, and if that, I think you're joking. I really don't know if that is the case or not. I don't think it is though. Like, I know we have a lot of views, but subscribers, that's definitely not the case. But I do appreciate it, man. Welcome on to the show. I got to get your thoughts first off. I'm assuming you've saw it. What are your thoughts on Sage Northcutt's one championship debut?
Holy fucking shit! Like,
Yikes.
I mean, first of all, as a fan, like just to see a KO like that is just like, wow, that's what we come to see the sport for. But it also brings up the other side of the sport, which I've kind of been a big critic of, which is talent development. And with Sage Northcutt, you've got somebody who's had a lot of hype behind him, whether it's just or not, it remains to be seen. But with the hype that's been around him, you would like to have seen his career be developed better. And obviously, with his move to ONE FC, I thought the idea was to, oh, okay, he goes up to ONE FC, not necessarily fights bums, but improves his record, improves his confidence, his experience in the game. But I mean, he threw him in there against an absolute savage. And again, I don't know the guy's name, but from the best of my knowledge, he's highly revered
Cosmo
in the. Oh,
Cosmo Alexandre, I believe.
okay. I did remember hearing Brendan Schaub talk about it even on his podcast, and he was talking about how this guy is very revered in the MMA circus. Again, he's known to be a very high level kickboxer, and for Sage Northcutt, who isn't the best with his grappling and his takedowns, I mean, it was always going to be a tough matchup. But again, I don't know. My thing is really is if you want to build the gap, you don't put him in there against him. So maybe ONE FC are looking at it and saying that we want to give him stiff competition to show that ONE FC is full of elite level fighters just as well as the UFC. So it's interesting to see it, but again, from the fighter's point of view, again, I have to feel bad for Sage. He got knocked out by someone who was just a lot better than him on the night, and this could really be a real dent to his confidence leading into his future. So let's see how he bounces back. But yeah, it's a difficult time for him.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be after the fight. I mean, it was a savage knockout. And then after the fight, it was supposed to be a 3-hour surgery. And just hearing from Raymond Daniels, who's engaged to his sister, and then Uriah Faber, who's of course really close to Sage, kind of piecing together, no pun intended, some of the details of the after effects of this fight. It was supposed to be a 3-hour surgery that ended up going 9 hours. That was
Yeah.
I heard that from Raymond Daniels on the MMA Hour, and then Uriah Faber said his cheek was splintered into 30 pieces with that punch. So I mean, yeah, that could be a career changer, especially for somebody like Sage Northcutt, who honestly, like when you think about fighters, that's not a guy you look at. Like he probably doesn't have to fight in his spare time. You know, he could probably make a living outside of fighting. So
Mm.
to have a loss and that brutal and that sort of injury coming out of a loss, I mean, like you said, who knows what happens with Sage from here as far as his career? That could be a devastating injury, one that makes you lose your confidence. You might not even want to get back into the octagon with someone as serious as that, unless you're gonna get like give me fights. But really, who's there for that? Now, I
Exactly.
mean,
And just to touch on something you quickly said again,
mhm,
you can talk about how he has potentially a future outside of MMA, and obviously in the year, and maybe like let's say a year, it's going to take for him to heal from this injury because again, it's a severe injury. I think he has 8 fractures in his face alone, which is again that's a madness, bro. Like that is a madness. So in that time, you don't know how many people are going to be coming with deals to maybe do this, whether it's sponsorships or whether it's modeling or anything that he really get into. So it's going
yeah,
to be a real test of his MMA mentality, whether he's really in it for the love of the game, or whether he's just in it for some money because you can probably find better money elsewhere, but
for
where you're not
sure,
going to get punched in the face and you get face fractured. So yeah, we're going
yeah.
to find out a lot about Nick Shave's Northcutt in the next year or so.
And what's so wild, man? You don't see these type of like as many fights and wars and just everything that we've watched over the last years. You don't see this. You don't see somebody like even Francis Ngannou has connected with punches. You usually don't
Mm.
see dudes' cheeks getting shattered into 30 pieces like this. For this to happen, not even a heavyweight, and to happen to Sage Northcutt, I mean, just to happen in general is rare. And so for it
Exactly.
to
I mean,
happen,
again, just to say that that's why my first reaction was okay. It wasn't I felt bad for him afterwards, but my first reaction was, oh my god, what a fucking KO! Like the guy was
yeah.
literally face first on the mat. It was crazy.
Like that's what I would imagine if I seen Francis Ngannou get to punch Sage Northcutt with no defense, like just tee off on him. Like that's
Mm.
that's how it felt. But yeah, so poor Sage Northcutt. That is unfortunate. Hopefully he gets well soon. Like I said, some of his team and people have came out to talk about it. He is out of the surgery. He's got to stay over there for a while. You know, you can't fly. The pressure and stuff like that. So hopefully Sage gets better soon, and we'll see where he goes. But speaking of one of Sage Northcutt's former mentors, kind of Tyron Woodley, he recently was scheduled to face Robbie Lawler in a rematch. He's had to pull out of that fight due to an injury. And since then, man, everybody and their mother literally has been calling out Robbie Lawler. They all want the fight. The young lions smell blood. I mean, guys from unranked to ranked. There's guys that deserve the fight, guys that make fun fights. Leon Edwards, Santiago Pozanibio, and then even Mike Perry. Like, I'm not going to lie, before anybody called Robbie Lawler out, whenever the first person that came to my mind to step in on short notice and fight Robbie Lawler, because when people step in on short notice, it doesn't matter about the rankings a lot of time. Depending on how short notice it is, they'll call somebody from the regional scene to step in and fight. So the first person that came into my mind for a short notice fight or a replacement fight, Mike Perry. I didn't think about the rankings. I
Mm.
didn't think about anything. I just thought about Mike Perry versus Robbie Lawler. What are your thoughts on Tyron Woodley having to pull out of this fight, and who would you like to see potentially step in and replace Tyron Woodley against Robbie Lawler?
Yeah, I feel like for Tyron Willie, first and foremost, this could be a blessing in disguise. I feel like Robbie probably was a decent matchup for him, but maybe not the ideal fight for him to want to come back into again. You can't really beat Robbie any better than what he did the first time, and maybe a different fight which will get him more hungry, more up for the fight, will maybe be better for the Tyron Willie that we want to see, because we want to see a Tyron Willie that's hungry, that's motivated, that's really going for the kill. Like what he says a lot in his interviews, but then doesn't always play out in some of his recent fights. Other than the Till fight, of course, where he was amazing, but other than that, we don't see this aggressive Tyron Woodley that he's always talking about. So maybe someone a bit more hungry and more a young and up and comer, like a Darren Till, for instance, can maybe get that out of him in his return fight after losing his belt, obviously. So and that's who we want to see Robbie in there against. Again, bro, great minds think alike, man. And I saw what happened, and I saw he was getting talked about as in terms of a replacement. And I've seen the likes of Darren Till at 175. I was seeing Leon Edwards throwing his name in there. I've seen other decent names, Ponzinibbio. They were all cool names, and they will all be great fights.
Yep.
Every Lawler fight's a great fight. But Mike fucking Perry, I mean, come on. Who wouldn't want to see that? I mean, even there was a soundbite from a couple of years back when he says, "Who doesn't want to see me beat up Robbie
Yeah,
Lawler?" And
everyone want to see me beat up Robbie Lawler. It's like
that one,
perfect timing.
exactly. I know, like, I mean, come on. I think it was it's 2 or 3 weeks until the actual card, so there's still enough time for him to have a decent training camp into that fight. And I mean, he's coming off of a really good win. I feel like there's no reason not to give him that fight. I feel like there's no reason not to give him that fight.
Yeah, I love it. And Darren Till, him and Ponzinibbio, yep, they both have thrown their name in the hat. Brian Barberina, just to name a few guys. Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad, Elysia Capoeira, Zaleski dos Santos, Anthony Martin, Mike Perry. I mean, so Robbie Lawler definitely has his pickings to choose from. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as just exciting fights, I mean, Darren Till fits that bill as well. I don't see Robbie Lawler versus Darren Till being anything but exciting. Only thing we would have to worry about, which is why Darren Till said he'll meet at 175, is the weight cut. You know, Darren Till's
Yeah.
notoriously had issues making 170 in the past, and so to make it on short notice would be difficult. But he said he is willing to meet Robbie Lawler at 175. So there's a lot of guys. Little fun
Mm-hmm.
exchange between Ponzinibbio. He responded to Darren Till, who's trying to get his fight, he feels. He said, bruv, I'll give you the bell money to come fight me in Uruguay after I whoop Robbie Lawler. You missed weight, back-to-back losses, knocked out in front of your own people. Now you're picking a new weight class, spoiled brat. Santiago Ponzinibbio coming with that heat. But yeah, so a lot of good possibilities there, man. There's been some talk of Uriah Faber possibly returning to fight. What are your thoughts on, potentially? And this is just I didn't even plan on talking about this, but I see him talking about Sage Northcutt. What are your thoughts on
Mm-hmm.
Uriah Faber potentially making a return? The Hall of Famer coming back to active fighting.
Yeah, I mean, the legend of the game. Again, a decently entertaining fighter. Obviously, he has a great resume. Never quite got his hands on the UFC title. And I guess it's all about who you match him up with. Again, if you, it needs to be really the right fight. And I remember there was rumors of even Conor coming back to like a Uriah Faber fight, which obviously they had their rivalry back in the day. That'll be, I guess, a decent tune-up fight you would imagine for Conor, even though I guess Faber's got the wrestling. But it really depends who it could be. And then there's other talks of even TJ Dillashaw, perhaps, which should have been
Yeah, maybe
hilarious had he
two
not
years
got
from
popped.
now.
Yeah, exactly. Had he not got Puttt. So but yeah, I mean, it really depends who it is. Again, how old is Faber? He's maybe like what, 37 or 8? He's
37,
not.
38.
Yeah, so he's not beyond the hill, like in his mid 40s. So again, I could see it happening. Yeah, I could see it happen. I wouldn't mind seeing it. To be fair, I wouldn't mind seeing it at all. In fact,
Yeah,
you know what?
man.
You could build a young guy off. Again, I would say Sean O'Malley, for instance, because maybe they wouldn't want to go in that direction. But maybe he's a bit beyond that point. But certainly a younger guy coming up could do with fighting somebody with the name of Uriah Faber. I feel like that would be a good matchup if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, kind of like Anderson Silva fighting a bunch of guys, just it's a lot of name value for one thing, but
Mm.
as far it's funny because he started talking about coming back before TJ Dillashaw was suspended, because after Cody Garbrandt had lost twice, it was like, well, Uriah Faber and TJ Dillashaw actually that was a realistic fight. Now not so much, but yeah, man, and if he comes back, I'm curious. I wonder if he would come back to the UFC, I would imagine, or maybe somewhere like One or Bellator, so that'd be interesting. Other than that, one other thing I wanted to just a couple things to touch on, and then we'll get into the next fight card. We'll talk about that, and then I'll ask you a few questions. So Thiago Santos versus John Jones is going down. Speaking of Sean O'Malley on the same card at UFC 239. And leading up to the fight, of course, everyone's going to ask Thiago Santos about the picograms. And he has decided to take the route of, just playing into it and saying John Jones is going to be remembered as a Reuter and it's his legacy and it's his fault. And what are your thoughts on John Jones for one? And this is something this is probably going to get into a good conversation. What are your thoughts on him fighting these guys, the Thiago Santoses, the Anthony Lionheart Smiths, and these guys that we feel like he's probably going to beat? Compared to fighting Daniel Cormier at heavyweight. That's one thing I want to talk about. But what about all these guys and just, having to keep bringing up John Jones's steroid past? I mean, it's there, so I guess you have to, but to me, it's kind of getting
Mm.
old. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously, as you know, we've had many long conversations or even just like essays written about this in the group chat about obviously the John Jones situation with drugs and whatnot. But obviously pertaining to this, again, it's an easy way to build up a fight, and I guess for obviously if you're just a rival of his and you haven't got much of a storyline really there to be said.
Yeah,
Obviously, Santos doesn't speak much English, so
yeah.
even if Jones was at the presser, which he was ill for, what was he really going to say to him in person? That's going to translate to great views. So obviously, I guess going down the whole you're a PD user. That's kind of my built-in excuse. If I do lose, I'm using someone who's obviously using drugs and has it's still in the system and all that. So I guess you can use it, but obviously, as you've said, it is getting a little bit boring to the point where like who really cares about it anymore? And I think that's a good thing because hopefully he doesn't continue to keep popping for it, and then he's having to still get bailed out by the whole exemption and whatnot. But yeah, it's getting boring. But getting on to obviously your other point, which is how do I feel about him fighting these fights? I think these are exactly the perfect fights for John Jones right now. And again, a lot of people want to be having this kind of microwave mentality of, oh, let's get John Jones in there at heavyweight right now. But who's really there for him at heavyweight right now to fight?
Oh, we're
Yes,
about
those
to
fights
talk
are.
about this. Let me pull up
Oh,
the
well, I know we're
article. We're
gonna get
about to
into it.
talk about this. That's the perfect place to go.
All
That's
right.
the only
Now,
thing I
don't.
want to see right now.
Mm,
I can't
all
find
right,
the
now.
article. Oh, there it is. John Jones says he won't fight Cormier at heavyweight. Pretty much
Mm,
essentially admitting to ducking the fade. He doesn't like his chances. This is okay.
yep.
I'll let you go first. What are your okay? So you said you feel like Thiago Santos, these guys are the perfect fights for him right now, and you don't want to see him
Yeah.
rush to heavyweight, correct?
I don't want it to go to heavyweight yet.
Okay, here's my thoughts. Daniel Cormier's window is kind of limited. So if we're ever going to see John Jones versus Daniel Cormier again, it should be at heavyweight, right? Would you rather see the trilogy at heavyweight or another 205 light
Yeah,
heavyweight?
definitely a heavyweight. Definitely.
Okay, so with that being said, and with Daniel Cormier's window being limited, he's got to fight him sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I mean, if you want my thoughts on that, and again, obviously, as a big John Jones fan, and actually a big DC fan, for me, like, I'll go as far to say this is probably the best rivalry of any sports that I can remember in modern history, really, in the
100%.
21st century. Again, if you just think about all the backlash, even the misfights that didn't happen, all the press conferences, the things that happened outside the cage, the fights, and then even the competition inside the ring, which was amazing. So two of the best fights in terms of just high
Yeah,
level MMA that I've seen
that's where
ever.
they have
So
Khabib and McGregor beat, the inside the cage.
exactly. 100%. So again, with all that being said, however, John Jones ducking and fade is somebody he's already beaten twice. I mean,
At a new
really, full
division,
time. I guess you know what. And to be fair, even in his interview, which I thought was very candid of him, he was very honest. He's really very respectful. Sorry, should I say, of DC's abilities, especially at heavyweight, giving him a size advantage, giving him an energy advantage as well, because he wouldn't be depleted at all. He was
uh-huh.
fair, and he was fair in terms of saying that that would be a very tough fight, and that would be his toughest fight. Yes, but again,
Well, just let me
he's already
pause right there.
yeah.
Also, in other words, he's saying I'd rather fight DC when he's not at 100%.
Well, yeah. That's pretty much what
So
he is
I
saying.
want to
Yeah,
fight. So okay, continue.
yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is, yes, he could go and fight DC at heavyweight, and I think he's not completely opposed to it. It's just he would probably prefer to fight somebody else, or maybe I don't think he wants to fight him at 205 again because really there's no point of it because he's already beaten him twice at 205. So there's something for him to gain. It's going to be at heavyweight, and I think
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of playing the hard game where you know what, if I'm going to fight him at heavyweight with all these parameters in his favor now, I need to be compensated financially. So I think that's the angle Jones is going at. And then back to my original point is why I'd rather have Jones wait is because other than DC at heavyweight, which again would be amazing for us as fans because that's the best rivalry in MMA. Obviously, and I think in all our sports, but definitely let alone MMA. I feel like as great as that would be, Jones doesn't need to do that now. Right now, he could continue to do what he didn't really finish doing back in the day, which is cleaning up the 205 division again. Because in his time gone, it's refilled again, and you got the likes of obviously Santos now. He already beat Smith. Gustafsson obviously he just beat again. Rockhold now come up. You obviously got Johnny Walker's everybody's favorite Brazilian right now.
For sure.
All these fights which are very interesting, which we could all see him do now, and let the heavyweight division build. Because my point is, he's already beat the heavyweight champion twice now. Yes, he could go fight him at heavyweight again, and it'll be an amazing fight. But why not let that division build? Let a real star come up and bring himself to the eyes of the casual fan base as well as obviously the MMA fan base, whether it's an Ngannou or whether it's a Stipe who regains his belt, and then fight that guy in a major fight, let's say in a year's time, where that's really built up as the two best guys in the world fighting each other. Because if he fights DC now and then he wins again, he's kind of forced to then stay at heavyweight, where Jones has probably got 3 or 4 years left. So why would he want to bounce in between now when he can clean up 205 completely, get rid of everybody that's there, and then jump up to heavyweight and make it a real big fight between two certified champions rather than fighting somebody he's already beaten
Okay,
twice.
let me
Get what I'm
stop you
saying?
right there because there's a
Yeah.
lot to respond to. But for one thing, just to what you were saying, why not take a little more time, clean out the division? To my original point, DC doesn't have much time. Even if he stays around for 2 more years, that's pushing it. He was supposed to retire March this year. So he's trying to retire as soon as possible. He might have 1, maybe 2 more fights. So he doesn't really have much time for Jon Jones to clean out the division. Also, he's got to fight Stipe Miocic coming up. And he's risking the fight there. If DC loses to Stipe Miocic, then there is no Jon Jones coming up to heavyweight and fighting DC for. I mean, he still could, but it would be different. DC wouldn't be undefeated at heavyweight anymore. He wouldn't be the champion. So right now, it would also. And I did like your point about maybe he's playing hard to get and trying to negotiate for a way bigger payday here. And I get that. And he did admit he's kind of doesn't. He didn't say he doesn't like his chances, but he said he doesn't want to fight DC when pretty much he's at 100%. So
it's a much tougher fight than what it would be.
It's a much tougher fight. So right now, if you don't fight him right now at heavyweight, I mean, for one, you're admitting you don't want to fight him in the toughest fight. Like you're saying you don't want to challenge yourself because it's not just about DC. It's also about moving up to heavyweight and winning a second belt, which, like I said, if DC loses the belt to Stipe Miocic, that's off the table. And now you have to move up and fight Stipe, and then you have to beat Stipe and then hope DC's still around. So I just think I do hear what you're saying about, it would be nice to be able to build it up a little more and take a little more time, but I just think we don't have as much time with this fight specifically.
Can I quickly interject to ask one question?
Yeah.
Does Jon Jones need to fight DC for a third time?
Does he need to? It depends on what you mean. Like, for his legacy, I think it would make sense. I mean, you don't want to just go on beating a bunch of middleweights. Like, to me, fighting 3 middleweights in a row is hurting your legacy more than fighting for a second belt in a second division and being the only guy to ever beat Daniel Cormier at heavyweight and winning 2 belts in the heaviest weight classes. I mean, it's the heaviest weight, just light heavyweight and heavyweight are the 2 heaviest weight classes, which is always why the heavyweight's the baddest man on the planet. So he's saying he does not want to move up and become he don't want to challenge himself. He'd rather keep fighting these middleweights and just what? I don't even understand how this is adding to his legacy. You're just adding wins to your record?
Well, let me jump in and say maybe this is what my perspective is of what Jon Jones is thinking. And we have to remember he's a very cerebral fighter as well as a cerebral guy in terms of picking his fights. And this is the same guy who essentially Dr. Fedor chose Sonnen on I think a month's notice, just didn't fight him back in 2 or 3 months just to make sure that he was completely prepared for that style of fight. And that was one of his easiest fights. So this is to show that this is a guy who's very selective with the fights that he chooses and when he chooses them. Now, my understanding of what Jon Jones wants to do is he wants to, again, clear out the division for 3 or 4 fights and then jump up to heavyweight. Again, there's no rush for him necessarily to jump up now and fight DC, who's already beaten twice. Why not wait, again, let's say till next year? Obviously, DC will probably most likely be out the window. And again, he doesn't need to fight DC for his legacy. Again, we would have loved that for the story for them to fight the trilogy. But realistically, he's already beaten twice. If you want to argue one with 1 no contest, okay, fair enough. But he's already got the still image of him knocking out DC. It won't get much better than that if he even was to do it at heavyweight and win the second belt. Why not win the second belt against somebody else who, in your mind, is obviously an easier fight, potentially, than DC, when you've already cleaned out 205, and then you can potentially say that you're the man. I mean, yeah, maybe it does sound weak, and you have to remember the context of the interview that he was giving. Yes, he was saying, yes, he feels like he's the best fighter in the world, but he's also accepting the fact that DC at heavyweight is the hardest fight possible for him in the world. So why would you bear in mind his context?
The toughest fight possible, so we can preserve our legacy.
So bear in mind it's the toughest fight possible.
That sounds like Floyd Mayweather. Let's avoid the toughest fight possible so we can preserve our legacy.
Well, you're looking at it like that, but also look at it. He's defending his belt against the best guys at 205. Which
I don't even know about that.
And
Corey Anderson, 100% Corey Anderson has the best case to a title shot, and he's getting skipped by Thiago Santos because I guess Thiago knocks dudes out. Corey Anderson is the best guy at 205. As far as the resume, who deserves the shot, it's Corey Anderson. That's not who Jon Jones is fighting.
Okay, so the caveat to that is, again, you could fight somebody like Corey Anderson, who, again, I think that would be a great fight because Corey Anderson is certainly more of a decision fighter than, let's say, a Santos and a Smith. And I feel like it's going to take somebody like that to really give Jones a few more problems other than someone who's a very
so let's just
high twitch fighter like Walker. But again, back to the initial point, Jones, essentially, when you're defending your belt against the number one contenders in your division, you're normally fighting the best guys, right? So let's just leave that as it is. You're fighting the best guys in your division, and then you're going to jump up to heavyweight when it suits you when you can fight an undisputed champion at heavyweight who you've not already beaten twice? Why would you not want to do that? Especially when a guy you've already beaten twice, in your eyes, is the best fighter in the world other than yourself.
And he's even better at heavyweight. So he's admitting he hasn't beat Daniel Cormier at his best. Like, I beat him
Yeah,
twice, even though it wasn't at his best. I'll take it. Like, I don't want to fight him at his best. I'd rather beat him when I know he's not 100%, take those, and then preserve my legacy.
I understand that, but at the same time, we're
And,
talking
and,
about his
and
legacy, and
just
it's
real quick,
easy.
to one of your
Okay.
earlier points about John Jones, because I wanted to bring this up because whenever guys move divisions, sometimes they're like log jams divisions. And so what that can do is it can bring out a true number one contender. If John Jones was at heavyweight building a fight with DC, then it would allow Thiago Santos to fight like Corey Anderson. And then the winner of that maybe would have to fight Johnny Walker. And then we would have a true number one contender at light heavyweight. Like, this dude is the number one contender. He should be fighting John Jones. This is a real fight. Instead of just clearing these guys out before I don't even think the guy he's fighting or the guys he's been fighting is necessarily the best light heavyweight in the world. I don't know if Thiago Santos or Anthony Smith can beat Corey Anderson. They haven't fought yet. A lot of these guys are just moving up to the division. There's a lot of work they haven't put in yet, and they're fighting for titles.
Oh no, I mean, that's something I do agree with. I feel like if Jones was to move up, it would let the division really, again, naturally give you a number one contender, because again, he's already beaten the number 1 and 2 contender, which is Smith and Gustafsson, who are fighting I believe next week. So again, I know that's a fair point. That's a fair counter. I mean, to your point earlier, my thing is just with Jones already beating the guy already at heavyweight, he's a champion. Why does he need to then go and do it again? Yes, he's already admitted that he's not beaten the best version of DC.
That's
But again, now
why.
but again, and then your thing is that's because for his legacy, it makes more sense to then beat DC. But at the same time, it's easy to it's easy to judge from the fishbowl of legacy when we're in the moment right now. In 20 or 30 years' time, when it says on his paper he's already beaten DC twice, and then he moved up a year later to go and beat the heavyweight champion, let's just say that's Stipe Miocic
Yeah,
at the
no,
time.
that's fair. That's fair. 100%. It
Then
doesn't
how
matter
can we?
when you win the heavyweight belt. Like,
Yeah,
when you look back, like 20 years from now, when you look back at it in hindsight, it won't matter that you beat DC a third time, as long as you got the heavyweight belt at some point, because it doesn't
yeah,
matter when
exactly.
you won it. When you look back, you'll be a 2-division champion. But in the
Yes.
moment, yeah, right now, I mean, hindsight, it will look better, but right now it's the weak move. But I guess it is hindsight. It won't matter if you fight DC a third time, even though that's the toughest fight. But I mean, there will be some people that remember you didn't take the toughest fights. I mean, hindsight, Floyd Mayweather's records is always going to look great, but
True, but his bank account looks better. Let's be real. That's what it's about. Jones' bank account will look a lot better in 20 years' time if he doesn't take the DC fight, potentially
and that's
loses
one
it,
thing we didn't
which is
bring
why.
up that I just want to
Mm,
bring up, because everything we've touched
yeah.
on, is fair and valid. But he was willing to move up to fight the easy fight, Brock Lesnar, as well. But again, 20 years from now, no one's gonna look back and remember that. So who cares? But in the moment, what he's doing seems weak. I'll go up and I will fight Brock Lesnar at heavyweight, but I will not fight Daniel Cormier, so I can fight these middleweight dudes until there's an easier heavyweight champion to fight. That's kind of whack. But 20 years from now, no one's, I guess, going to remember that. As long as on paper you were the champ.
I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, again, it's easy for you to paint the narrative that he's fighting blown up middleweight, he's avoiding DC, but in the cold light of day, he's defending his belt against the deserving number one contender at 205,
Yeah,
whether you
no,
believe
not
it or not.
deserving. You can say
Again,
number one contender,
we're
not
looking at
deserving.
we're looking at it on paper. This is how we're gonna look at it in 20 years' time again, and that's what it's all about for Jones. He's always talked about his
Yeah.
legacy in terms of being the most dominant fighter in UFC history. That's what he's always wanted to be.
Bro, do
So
you
in
know
that,
how
I would like.
far ahead you've got to be to thinking about your legacy 20 years from now? That is legitimate though.
Yeah,
Like,
if you're John, again, I'm looking at this from the mindset and perspective of John Jones. And again, when you've beaten and when you've won every single fight that you've had, and you've probably only had maybe 2 hard fights in your entire life, then you're going to be looking at it like that. You're going to be looking at
yeah,
what's
no,
the
that's
great best of your
crazy.
career.
Looking at this shit from 20 years in the future. But yeah, no, that because 20 years from now, a lot of this shit's not. No, that's if you look at it from 20 years in the future, I guess you're right.
I mean,
But
obviously,
if
I know
you're looking,
I know for us simpletons, like I don't even know what I'm gonna have for dinner tonight. Like, let's be real. But I mean, when you're looking at it from John Jones' perspective, I feel like this is gonna be what he's more thinking about. And as much as I think the DC third fight will be appealing to him, I feel like there's things that are just more appealing and obviously less risk as well. Which again, he was fair
yeah,
enough to admit. I mean, you might think it's weak, but I think it's calculated. I think that's how I think it is.
Yeah,
Calculated.
it's calculated. Floyd Mayweather's fights are also calculated. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's calculated. If you're doing it for legacy and you just want to stay undefeated, that's what you're
Mm.
doing, though. You're not fighting the best in the world, so you can have a pretty legacy 20 years from now. But hey, it is
Mm.
what it is. We've talked about it. I think we got points out. That was a good conversation. But now it's the time where I want to get to know a little bit more about you, Forward. And
Oof.
in this segment, I'm gonna ask you about some of your favorite fighters, and I guess that's what I'll start with first. Who are some of your favorite fighters, like the guys that got you into MMA, and then like your current favorite fighters in the UFC or
Oof.
Bellator, anywhere right now?
Wow. Again, obviously we've talked about that guy quite a lot, but in terms of first getting into MMA, again, this is a while back. It was John Jones. Remember the first things I do remember was seeing obviously the Ultimate 8 series that they were talking about. Obviously Jones's best fights. I remember one thing that really stuck in my mind was the Vitor Belfort fight. Again, it showed it in the clip, and again, you have to bear in mind this was at a time where John Jones had never really been tested. I think the only hard shot he took in his entire career was from Lyoto Machida before he choked him out. So this guy had really never faced adversity. And at the time, John Jones went against Vitor Belfort, looking like every other John Jones fight until he got caught in that armbar submission where obviously it looked like he was it hyperextended his arm, like he
Uh-huh.
was about to tap. But that was going to be the end of this legendary streak of unbeaten championship fights that John Jones has been in. But he dug within, he managed to overcome that, and then they eventually submitted him with, I mean, I think it was an Americano, they call it in MMA. I mean, that was a flipping sick ass submission he got on Vitor Belfort. So again, from that moment on, I started to look at it a bit more as I was a bit more of a casual fan, I would say, back then. I would tune in every now and then for the fights that I wanted to see. So if it was John Jones, then I would definitely tune in. But again, and I will get onto my favorite fighters right now in the modern time. But again, this is I'm talking about the journey of what got me into really being
Yeah.
as let's say a full-time MMA fan, if I could steal the pun. But I think what really turned me was then the Conor McGregor era. And again, it seems a bit cheesy now, and obviously my mindset to Conor's changed a lot over the years. But obviously at the time, he's come up. Obviously the way he was talking about the game, the way he would predict finishes and then finish his fighters, it was obviously very entertaining. And I thought the moment that really changed it all was the Chad Mendes card. Or well, I say the fight, but really it was the card because and again, I think actually, no, let me just make sure I bring it up here because
I'll pull it up.
you can bring it up for the viewers. I do want to bring it up just for myself, just to
All right.
make sure I jog my memory completely. Yeah, here we go. So this was 2015, 12th of July, UFC 189. And again, I didn't actually watch it live. I watched it back the day after. I made sure I didn't get any spoilers. I watched it with a friend of mine, and we watched it. And before, you know what? Because you know the main event was only 2 rounds, so essentially 10 minutes. So let's watch the entire main card. And obviously there was Brad Pickett versus Almeida, which is a sick KO from Almeida. There's Gunnar Nelson versus Thatch, and even I remember the atmosphere for the Gunnar Nelson fight because obviously there was a lot of Irish fans there, and obviously he's kind of essentially a how do you say he's basically they've taken him as their own as an Irish fighter, and obviously the
Yeah.
atmosphere for that fight was crazy. Then it went
Honorary.
up, he's an honorary Irishman essentially. Then they went up another level with Dennis Bermudez versus Jeremy Stevens. If you remember that KO but these fights I'm going to recommend to you guys because we're going to get into my favorite fights. Any of these fights that you've not watched or you have a very blurry memory of, go and watch these fights because these are some of the best fights you will ever see. Dennis Bermudez versus Jeremy Stevens, what a fucking fight and a KO! And even when he jumped out the ring, he shakes whose hand is it? Petita, one of the Petita brothers' hands. It was just a surreal moment. That was amazing. And then we get to the co-main event: Robbie Lawler
Ooh.
versus Rory McDonald 2. Still to this day, my favorite ever UFC fight, and that's what got me fucking hooked. I mean, I was unreal again. Words don't do that fight justice. So again, if you've not seen that fight or you don't remember it completely, watch it back.
100%, man. I was
Watch it
watching
back.
that too. I could not believe it. Like,
Mm,
just fucking mind blowing. One of the greatest fights of all time. 100%. That's one of the fights. I didn't know if Roy would be the same. Like
mm.
Robbie. Like I felt like he like snatched his soul in that fight.
I mean, they both definitely left a piece of themselves inside
Yeah,
there,
both of them left a piece of themselves.
and
But I
for
felt like
me,
Rory
mm,
by the end of the fight, I was like, man, I just felt like his nose. He was coming forward. His nose was already broken, and he was still coming
mm.
forward. And fucking Robbie punched him in it again. I was like, oh my fucking dude!
Whew,
Who was
I
wild.
know. And again, just to touch on one more thing in this fight, probably my favorite ever moment in UFC history was at the end of that fourth round when obviously the whistle goes off, or I say whistle as if this is a football match. they blow the horn for the end of the round, and then they're both just standing there looking at each other.
Yeah.
Blood on both of their faces, and they're walking forward. Oh my god, that gets me
Man.
hyped up differently. Oh my days, but yeah, amazing fight, amazing moment, and then there was the main event. It was fucking crazy. And again, bear in mind, I don't know any of the results. Obviously, Chaz Mendes in the second round looks like I think he got to mount. He had his back at one point. It looked like he was gonna finish him, and it's like, shit, is this really how it's gonna end?
Elbows.
But then obviously Conor got back up. Obviously Chad Mendes at that point was really fatigued. So was Conor. It was a very high-paced opening 8 or 9 minutes. And then obviously Conor got the finish. There was also the emotion, the outpouring of joy, relief, everything at the end of that fight. And yeah, man, after that point I was hooked. So yeah, that was crazy. That was an amazing. That's what really got me hooked into being a really avid fan, I would say.
Okay.
And
Before
if you
you
want me
get
to
to your
still,
current,
yeah, go.
before you get to your current favorite fighters, I just got to address Chris C, because he's a John Jones stan. He always has been, and he took a little bit of, he's taken a little bit of what's the word? He doesn't like my stance on. He feels like I'm painting John Jones scared of Daniel Cormier heavyweight. I'm not painting him that. He painted himself that. He's trying to talk DC back to light heavyweight, essentially, right? He would rather fight him there. He's like, if he wants to fight me again, he can come back to light heavyweight, but he doesn't think he'll ever do that. But he says, in his own words, look, he says, I'm a realist. Daniel Cormier is a special athlete, and anyone can be beat. I think my greatest chance of losing would be to a guy like Daniel Cormier. We'd be giving him power and strength advantage over me. It doesn't make sense. He's saying if I go up to heavyweight and fight DC, he will have more strength and power than me. So it doesn't make sense to fight him. Anyone can be beat. He's saying I can lose. If I go up to heavyweight, it doesn't make sense because I can lose. He's saying he does not want to go to heavyweight because there's a good chance of him losing, and he wants to remain undefeated. He wants to keep winning. He's saying right now, I make light heavyweight very easily. It would just make no sense to fight a guy who I think technically is on your level and give him a size advantage. I'm not doing it. He's saying I think DC is on my level technically, so I don't want to give him a size advantage. Because I mean, I'm not painting this picture. I got this from John Jones's words. My bad, forward. Sorry to interrupt
Oh
you.
no, I mean just to stay on that point again, and I think I agree with even your points on why it's okay, maybe against his legacy and whatnot. And maybe John should take the fight with DC. I guess I feel obviously you're saying the word scared, and maybe you can. I use the word calculated. So I think we see it the same
There's
as
a
just.
fine line between smart and scared.
But at the same time, when you're saying scared, let's
Not
look at it
scared as in I'm
Yeah,
scared of taking the fight, as in preserving my legacy. Not scared
yes,
as in, oh my God, he's already beat him twice. I'm not saying like having nightmares about DC at heavyweight. I'm talking about he's scared of the possibility of losing. He's saying there's
yes.
a real possibility I could lose.
And my rebuttal to that is yes, he is. He's very aware of it, as he made in that statement in the video with Dan Hardy on BT Sports. But the way I look at it is again, any John Jones fight, he's probably 90% chance of winning. When he's fighting somebody like DC, it's probably 60%, I would say.
At
I think
heavyweight.
if you no, I think it's 60% in general. When I think before
Okay.
we saw the first two fights, I think they were very competitive fights. We saw how they played out. DC's obviously an amazing fighter. I think when it comes to heavyweight, then you're looking at maybe it's 55%. So that's what the little difference is. And again, he doesn't want to really play the lottery in that sense. I feel that he can go back, still fight these, as you say, blown up middleweights. I say the deserving guys are 205. And then go fight the heavyweight when he's ready, and the purse is going to be right. When the bag's going to be right, you can secure the bag and you can fight the heavyweight champion whenever it is when he's ready.
But
That's how I look
also
at it.
more favorable matchup. Like instead of a 55, maybe a 70.
Definitely. But
Okay.
again, he's got to the point where he's earned the right to be able to do that.
Chris, she says, I heard that part already, but look at it from John's point. Why would he want to give DC an advantage? It's not really giving him an advantage if you're both heavyweights. I mean, John Jones is a pretty big boy himself. Now, I think, could DC make light heavyweight again? I think it's possible. I don't think he's going down. But anyways, we talked about that. I feel like enough. I don't really want to interrupt the whole flow of the conversation. Let's get back into your favorite fighters currently forward. Who are some of your favorite fighters fighting today? I know a few of them. Adesanya. I mean, there's Darren Till.
Hey,
Usman.
let's not let them all up the bag. Not just yet. Not just
Okay,
yet. We gotta
I'll
go by them
I'll
one
let
by
you
one.
go, man.
So okay, I'm gonna actually I'll save the one that you haven't named yet already because you kind of let a few of them at the back. But obviously, one as everybody knows, obviously Darren Till, aka the Gorilla Champ, aka UFC Champion 2020. We all know that's gonna be happening, all right? Okay, it didn't happen in 2018. I don't think it's gonna happen in 2019, but we're looking at 2020 for Darren Till, man. Probably at, if maybe maybe at middleweight. But obviously I'm a big fan of the guy. His come up was great. I was even a big fan of him before the Cerrone fight, and obviously the Cerrone fight, the way he kind of shocked the world, even though I had a pretty good feeling he was gonna win that fight. Um, yeah, I mean his rise and just in general, I like his mentality. I like the way he fights, of course. Again, maybe we need to talk about him a little bit later in terms of what he's doing wrong, because I've seen a lot of holes in his game which can be easily amended because he's got obviously great ability. But again, besides the point, amazing fighter, great potential, great future, and I just like his no fucks given attitude. That's the main thing that really attracts me to him. My other favorite fighters that I obviously love and enjoy right now, definitely as you've already said, Israel Adesanya. From the same tribe as myself, obviously back in Nigeria. If anybody didn't know that, I actually originate from Nigeria. I was born in London, UK, but my parents are from Nigeria. Same tribe, village. In fact, I think they're even the same village as Adesanya. So again, he's came from a similar place to myself. Obviously, they went to New Zealand and obviously took up MMA there, and obviously brought himself to the UFC. And as for an infamous tweet that I put out in January, which is become infamous now, I said that the UFC were going to have for the first ever, two Nigerian champions in the UFC, and it came to fruition. And yes, I'm counting the interim as an official UFC champion. I don't care what anyone says. Fuck out of here.
Now,
So
what if he loses? Will it still count? Like if he doesn't win the real belt?
Yeah, I mean, you're still
Yeah,
UFC
it still
champion. People
counts.
still look at Carlos Condit as a UFC champion. You would have looked at McGregor as a UFC champion, even when he beat Chad Mendes. I feel like when you beat somebody for the interim, again, maybe you're deserving of an interim title shot, perhaps, but when you beat somebody in an interim title fight, normally the person you beat is also of a championship caliber. So I feel like it's worth it. And again, when you look at how many championship belts are given out in boxing, I feel like it's worth that point of saying that, you know what, yeah, you're officially a UFC champion. And as you're seeing, as you brought up the tweet there, I think I can even read it there. Strap season, hashtag and new. Fun fact, the UFC will have two new Nigerian champions in the year 2019. And boom, it happened. And obviously to bring up to the next person,
Mystic
Kamaru.
full-time family.
Mystic. Hey, you know, it's Mystic full time. Again, a shout out to the Mystic panel that predicted Cejudo to be DJ. That was a great time. But yeah, another of my favorite fighters, obviously Kamaru Usman. Again, it goes without saying, obviously Nigerian as well. Great mentality, great fighter. And probably my number one fighter above all of those. Again, shout out to the likes of Robbie Lawler, of course. Justin Gaethje. Even DC, as much as I'm more of a John Jones guy, it has to be said. DC, of course, is obviously a favorite of mine. Obviously, Michael Bisping, as you know.
Amanda
Obviously,
Nunes, no love.
no, fuck me, man. No, man.
Oh
And
no.
speaking of that, obviously, shout out Chris Cyborg, obviously a friend of myself. Obviously, we chat every now and then on Twitter, every now and then, just saying. In the DMs, of course. But yeah, my favorite fighter in the
Chill.
UFC. I would have to say that's Max Holloway. Max Bless
Okay,
Holloway.
good choice.
Yeah, man. I love the attitude. Obviously, it is what it is. And I think he just the fight style. Even so with a lot of fighters, when you earn your right to the top, and you're gonna really be like, oh, I deserve a title shot. Now I'm owed this. I need this. I deserve this. No, he went and earned every single step of the way. He probably fought 2 or 3 number one contendership fights before he actually got to the belt,
Hundred
and he had to win
percent.
the
He's like
interim
Tony
belt.
Ferguson that actually got to get the belt.
Exactly. And again, even shout out to Tony Ferguson. Again, there's a lot of likable characters in MMA, which is what has also drawn me to the sport.
There
But
is, man.
again,
It's
with
just the
Max
guys you've
Holloway,
named that, like the
mm,
Poirier, the Gaethje, the Ferguson, Holloway, all
mm,
these dudes, man.
very likable characters. And again, I was gutted when he lost to Poirier, as much as I'm a fan of Poirier himself. But yeah, Max will be back. Again, another favorite fighter of mine, Max Holloway for sure. Probably number one on my list if I was to number them all. But yeah, that's my list.
All right, well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. This was fun, and next Tuesday, hopefully, we can do it again. We'll have a panel this weekend or something. We'll do a panel where you can come back on for
Sweet.
sure too. So yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I don't want to make these too long. I think we had some good conversations. It's good to get to know a little bit more about you and for the full-time family. I mean, I knew a lot of that actually already, your favorite fighters and stuff. But yeah, man, favorite fights and all of that. Cool to hear that Lawler versus McDonald. If you haven't watched that
Mm.
fight, I don't even know how you're on this channel, honestly, because I mean, I would imagine you've at least been watching that long. It's and if you haven't, it's that good of a fight. It's one that it's a must watch. Go watch that thing, man. So yeah, thanks forward again for
Wait,
coming
quickly
on. Go
before
ahead.
we go, again, one closing thought I want to give, and not even a closing thought. I just want to recommend another fight which I enjoyed so much live, and that was Cub Swanson versus Du Hoi Choi. If you've not seen that fight, watch it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes, sir. All right. Salute to the chat. Salute to Chris C. Salute to CFR Sports. Everybody in the building in the live chat. We're free. And until the next time, it is what it is, man. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. We're out.